Seventh video of 7 in this series. The next video series is going to be 3 videos. It's all about becoming mentally strong. And this is something I know a little bit about. I had panic attacks, performance anxiety, I had all that shit. And now I can perform under pressure. And I want to show you how I achieved that. Because if you don't, the science is pretty clear. Through fMRI brain imaging, the brain represents people as the mental states they habitually experience. These mental states are very similar to what Tony Robbins talks about. You got to change your state. You got to put yourself in that position. So if you are anxious, and food can cause this, chemicals can cause this, we know this now, you're biased to make the brain regions stronger that produce fear and anxiety, but also aggression. As you can see right here, when chronic stress becomes, well, when you have chronic stress, it bullies the hippocampus, which is your memory recall, memory consolidation, working memory. It prunes its dendrites, kills its neurons, and prevents neurogenesis. The amygdala is having a field day, and that stress overload creates more connections in the amygdala, which keep calling for more cortisol, even though there's plenty of the hormone available. The negative situation, which is your negative thoughts, feed on itself, and the more the amygdala fires, the stronger it becomes. And the great news is, as I'll talk about in future videos, you can actually shrink the amygdala down in size and metabolic activity. So that's over 8 weeks. So the amygdala can come down in size and your hippocampus can recover. As you can see here, significant increases, and also another brain region, temporal parietal junction, perspective taking, Einstein, thinking outside the box, empathy and compassion. So that'll be in future videos, but today we're going to connect all the dots here and find out what pushes cortisol up and it becomes unhealthy. Scientists say that in about 4 days through gene expression, you'll get a positive feedback loop and you'll be stuck in producing too much cortisol. Everything you see on screen there, emotional stress, inflammatory dysfunction, circadian stress, which is going to be a big emphasis in this video, glycemic dysfunction, which we've talked about before, and other things like yo-yo dieting, overtraining, things like that, all lower these important hormones: DHEA, androgens, testosterone, dihydrotestosterone, thyroid, and growth hormone. So we want to push these ones up. And critically, there's nothing wrong with cortisol. We just have to get it to healthy levels. And this right here is a big piece of the puzzle. So on the previous videos, we've covered a lot of that. But what we haven't covered is this emotional stress. So this is going to be the next video series. On screen there, the research is pretty clear. When we've got inflammation that is chronic, then guess what happens? Shuts down testosterone production. And over time, this leads to hypogonadism. And quite literally, as I've got here, penis, prostate, and testes scale down. And, that's a pretty terrifying thought. Low T concentrations are strong predictors of frailty, disability, and cardiovascular events that negatively influence muscle mass. We lose our muscle mass, including, again, the penis, the prostate, and the testes. On previous, or the last video, and other ones too, we had a look at these omega fats. And what was kind of interesting is that the system promotes these seed oils, and they're packed full of omega-6. So the take home from the new research is that they got healthy young men and they gave them optimal omega-3 and omega-6, and the other group had way too much omega-6. And as you can see on there, the volume of the testicles in the group that got the right amount of these omega-6 and omega-3s, and that was discussed on the previous video, and it's linked below, increased testicular volume, but the other group decreased. So there's a pretty significant reduction there. So this is one of the biggest problems that are causing a lot of men over time to have lower testosterone and feel like shit, store body fat, and be very difficult to put on muscle. And I discussed on the previous video where to go get this checked and what fats to actually eat. And on the previous video, we also discussed how we build muscle. And these two important points here: a low protein diet cause significant reductions in body weight, muscle mass, testes shrink, epidermis and seminal vesicle weight, and serum testosterone. And if you have a low-fat diet, low testosterone. So there's a lot of research on that on PubMed. And we also discussed the chemicals in the second video there. And low dose can screw you up. It can completely suppress dihydrotestosterone. And as Huben spoke about on one of his podcasts here on the Tubes, he says when dihydro came down, he said it was remarkable. I mean, I felt like garbage. It was actually kind of frightening to experience the sharpness of that cliff. And another thing that dihydro does is it's more potent, up to 10 times more potency than testosterone. So we want this one in the up position. The caveat, you can go bald. And that's generally because of a sensitivity to dihydro at the hair follicle. So not everyone goes bald. Too late for me. And I don't really give a shit about being bald. But, it just depends on how fucking activated you want to feel. And I also discussed on previous videos about, how these scientists are piecing this all together. And if you're paying any attention to what's going on in the world right now, especially the last 2 years, you know that maybe, just maybe, the system doesn't give too much of a shit about how you feel and how you perform. As Dr. James DiNicolantonio says there, the more you understand how badly our health authorities mess things up, the angrier you get. We don't have to get angry. We just have to get these hormones back in the up position and have healthy levels of cortisol there. So for a lot of years, I was living the low energy and high cortisol lifestyle. And to just speak to that, Dr. Ken Berry and we did a podcast on this, and this is what he had to say about it.
But just focusing on low testosterone, the classic symptoms are fatigue, no get up and go, no drive, no drive anywhere, no drive at the office, no drive, in the yard or the garden, no drive in the bedroom. Just, you don't really care about doing a good job at anything. You just kind of, you get by to get along. Weight gain is very common. You're tired all the time, yet you don't really sleep very deeply during the night. Belly fat is a huge, even if you're not overweight, you're still going to have a little belly pooch. It's very classic. You can start to develop man boobs, of which I have a YouTube video. That video
that was me. Yep.
2 million views or something, because having man boobs is so common in the world today that there are over 2 million men who've watched my video on YouTube about it, if not 3. All those things are symptoms of low testosterone. And there's a long list of prescription medications that you might be taking from your doctor, your doctor that you trust, that could actually be plummeting your testosterone levels. I've got a YouTube video about medications that lower testosterone. In case any of you guys are taking a medication, you can watch that video and make sure you're not taking one that does, by definition, lower your testosterone. But if a man has all these symptoms, he's got to get his testosterone checked, number one. And number two, he's got to start eating a proper human diet, which consists of the 5 steps I talked about earlier. Yeah. And then eating things that our DNA know is real food, because the word food is very often misused in modern society. Food should mean something that is full of nutrition, tastes good, and does not cause symptoms or conditions or inflammation.
That was Dr. Ken. Was that you? Was he describing you? Don't put up with that shit. You can fix this, but it's not a cakewalk. There's no magic pill. It takes time. And depending on how old you are, it can take anywhere from, say, 6 weeks to start getting revved back up to 12 months. So if you're like 50 or 60, it's going to take time. And another big consideration that I learned is that if you're a young man, you don't have a family, you're by yourself, you can go at this hard and it's a lot easier. But if you're a man with a family and you've got commitments, it's tougher. You need support to get to that place. That's why I needed coaches and mentors, because it's a journey. It's a lifestyle change. And as these scientists are giving us this information, as you can see from Professor Huberman, right, there are men in their 90s, and this isn't rare, as he said. It turns out that are making as much testosterone and dihydrotestosterone as they were in their 20s. But as you can see in this research paper here, we were around about 550 for a man my age back in the late 80s. And now we're about here in 2002. So you can imagine where it is. Now, my mentor, Dr. Anthony J., guess what he said about the old testosterone and where we need it to be? Listen to this.
You know, my age, I'm 49, so I guess mine should be around about 800 if I'm correct.
Yeah, the most doctor, if you get below 500, I think it's a big problem. Better fix it, like immediately.
Yeah. Below 500, and I'll reveal why shortly. But think about it. Dr. J told me that a man my age, 50, well, I'm 51, in the 1940s, they were around about here. Now they're down here. Now that's a big problem, as he said. And as Huberman said, there are men here and they're up here. Now, where do you want to be? So as I revealed in previous videos, we can increase testicular volume and size if, as Dr. Ken said on previous videos, you haven't left it too late. Because if you have, and there's too much destruction gone on there, he said that you can get some function back, but you're not going to get it all back. It's never going to be as good as it could have been. So don't put this off. If you're serious about peak human performance and you want to be activated and get, just charge your life, we have to get this right. What you see on screen there is that research paper again. And as Dr. J said, testosterone has plummeted about twofold ever since the 40s. And the reason why he said it needs to be at about 500 and above is because, as you see here, the late 90s, we're still here. And in the 90s, we're still relatively lean. Percentage of obese adults. 2018, completely different picture. Because testosterone is a big hormone when it comes to staying lean and muscular, but also being activated. So this is what testosterone does for us men. Significantly slows fat accumulation and improves insulin resistance when it's above that 500, and primary anti-inflammatory effect significantly reduces fat mass. And one of the big reasons why testosterone gives you more energy is because it rips off the body fat, but it also, as Sapolsky says here, it helps glucose go into the muscle and into the brain to have more energy. And another big thing that testosterone does is it lowers fear and anxiety, gives you more courage, confidence, and optimism, bone strength, muscle mass, sexual performance, and it makes effort feel good. And another pretty cool thing that it does, coming from Sapolsky, it's a status hormone. So what does that mean? As he says there, it's when you're challenged, you want to rise to that challenge and take it on, right? You're just like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to charge at this. So it's a status hormone. And when you feel challenged, if you don't feel self-doubt and anxiety, you rise to that challenge. You want to take it on. And as Rocky Balboa would say, that's how winning is done. So we've got to get this hormone back working for us. But another big problem that I see a lot of men do, and I used to make this mistake back in the past, is forget about old estrogen here. No, we've got to have estrogen at healthy levels. So we've got to have the ratio of estrogen to testosterone in the right position. So as Sapolsky says there, It actually helps stimulate cognition and neurogenesis, and it increases glucose and oxygen delivery, and it protects you from dementia. It decreases inflammation and oxidative damage in your heart and your blood vessels, including the microvasculature of your brain. So we've got to get the right ratios. You don't want to shut off estrogen. We need that one. But again, as I mentioned, the big problem is when cortisol, right, starts living your life for you. When we get into this positive feedback loop, and as Sapolsky said in one of his lectures, you get to a certain point in your life, you think, oh, this is who I am. This is the best that I can do. I'm going to go with the flow. And as he says here, that's the brain damage talking. And again, cortisol can do that, but so can inflammation. And I don't know about you, but when I get to 82, I do not want this typical 82-year-old brain, diseased, thinned out cortex. I want this healthy 82-year-old brain. And coming from everything that I've researched and worked with people a lot smarter than me, like Dr. Ken and also Dr. Anthony J, that emotional stress, inflammatory dysfunction, circadian stress, glycemic dysfunction, and all that other shit that I mentioned lowers, get to that in a second, the hormones that we need in the up position. Instead, they push cortisol in the up position, and we just get used to that mess. So what I've learned is that we've got to listen to the experts. For me, back in the day, I was on TRT back here. I'm off it now, and I've been off TRT for over 4 years. And I was on TRT then. That's the best that I could do. I put on the muscle, but it was just covered by a layer of fat. And I started working with this legend here, Scott Stevenson, PhD in applied exercise physiology. And I got there in about, 7 months. And let me tell you, the nutrition was completely different, and so was the training. And 2018, when I came off TRT, pretty scary thing, but that's something that I wanted to do. And, my PSA, prostate, wasn't too good. My red blood cells were too high, and a lot of people say, well, just get your blood drawn. But no, I want to make my own fucking testosterone. I don't know about you, but I want to make my own. So a year after that, well, actually a year and a half, that's where I was. My testosterone was below that 500, and look at me. I mean, and, I knew how to get lean, but because I didn't have that hormone working for me, it was below that threshold that Dr. J says we need to get above. I struggled, and that's the best that I could do. And in October 2021, testosterone was 600 to 700 there. That's where I got, and this is me now. So you can do this. We just got to understand that most of the things in our modern world, the chemicals, the inflammatory food, the omega-6 to 3 ratio, all that plays into you having a shit, just a hard struggle in life. We struggle with negative thoughts. We struggle with fat loss. We find it difficult to put on the muscle, and it shouldn't be like that. We can do better. So putting it all together, the other hormone that we want in the up position, I haven't spoken much about in this series, is DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. So from this research paper, when we get in the up position, and this is simply the ratio of cortisol to DHEA, and I'll show you how to get that right as we progress. But check this out. So significant increases, this is when DHEA is in the up position, significant decreases in the positive effect scales of caring and vigor, physical strength and good health, effort, energy, and enthusiasm. Significant decreases in the negative effect scales of guilt, hostility, burnout, anxiety, stress effects. DHEA was significantly and positively related to the affective state of warm-heartedness, whereas cortisol was significantly and positively related to stress effects. Back up here, the guilt, the hostility, the burnout. Now, let's think about that for a moment. Recall earlier, when I spoke about this. The brain represents people as the mental states they habitually experience. So if cortisol is doing the talking for us, it's changing our brain to be more anxious, to be more resentful. We can do better. And these hormones and neurotransmitters are the key, the foundation to be able to work on the mindsets to perform under pressure and just be activated when we're challenged and faced with setbacks. So, I mean, we've got to get these hormones in the right position, as you can see. So more research, and this is coming from Kelly McGonigal's book. And when I looked at this, I was like, shit, I've got to get this one up. Superior military performance. DHEA, problem-solving academic performance. More research here. So when DHEA is up, reduced negative thoughts. And it's a neurosteroid, so it helps your brain grow stronger from stress. And right here, perceived work at stress. Okay, associated. So when you feel stressed out at work, your DHEA is coming down. And as you can see over here from the research, DHEA, when it's down, sexual function is down, general health is down, mood is down, cognition is down, cardiovascular system is down. So we need to get it in the up position. And Kelly actually has got a really amazing talk about DHEA and the upside of stress here on the YouTubes. You should probably check that out. Now, the interesting thing about cortisol and DHEA, they have the same protein hormone precursor. It's called ACTH, all right? So let's think about that. If they have the same precursor, we're going to either make cortisol or we're going to make DHEA. So if cortisol is in the up position because we've got emotional stress, we're eating a shitty diet, whatever it is, we're going to make more cortisol. And ACTH, again, the precursor to both cortisol and DHEA, is released in a pulsatile manner 40 times a day. So in the first 2 to 3 hours, cortisol is supposed to come up like that. So we're going to make a bit of cortisol there, which is fine. That's healthy. And I'll put this together towards the end, how to get this right. And then cortisol tapers off and then DHEA takes over. So think about how much more DHEA you can make. You're going to feel better, warm-heartedness, caring. You know, this is what we have to put in the up position. So another big thing that I'm super focused in on again is having my brain healthy at 82 years of age. All right. So I don't want it thinned out. I want my brain to be sharp. Now, Professor Waltman and many other neuroscientists, like Professor Waltman from MIT, has shown that our brain has evolved to increase in size and IQ as we age when it has trophic support. So what's trophic support? Well, as it was explained to me, and it was explained in this book called The End of Alzheimer's, and this was by Dr. Dale Bredesen, you water the brain with healthy levels of hormones. Right? DHEA, testosterone, healthy estrogen, thyroid, growth hormone, vitamin D. And then we fertilize the brain with things like BDNF and NGF, nerve growth factor. And clearly we've got to eliminate the toxins from our life. And I've spoken about that on previous videos. And the other video, which is linked below, we've got to get this omega index above 8%. And the final piece of the puzzle is we've got to cleanse the brain. And the science is very clear on this. We have to sleep. The first 4 hours of deep restorative sleep, the brain's lymphatic system lights up. Very simply, the cerebral fluid is pushed into the brain and it hoses it clean. It cleans the brain of tau plaques, beta amyloids, toxic peptides. And there's much more we can do. And I'll speak about this, all of that there on future videos. But the big problem with inflammation is it shuts off trophic support. Okay. And when inflammation is up, its partner in crime is up, cortisol. And from my mentor, Dr. J, this is what cortisol does when it's in, well, inflammation does when it's in the up position, when it's chronic and inappropriate inflammation.
I mean, the problem with inflammation is it shuts off muscle growth. It basically tells your body you're in a stress state. So it's not a building state.
Right. So that's why the old brain there thins out and atrophies. Okay. So it's destroying the brain. So what we want is trophic support for the brain. And the way we do that, we've got to get our hormones back. We've got to fertilize the brain, eliminate the shit, get the omega index above 8% and cleanse our brain every night. And again, this is everything that takes us out, that pushes cortisol up. And in 4 days, coming from the neuroscientists, we get in this positive feedback loop and we keep spurting out more and more cortisol. So everything there, you can pause this if you like and just have a look at all of that. But make no mistake, food does it, chemicals do it, poor sleep does it, poor circadian entrainment does it, poor glucose control does it, overtraining does it, low calories, all of that shit plays into it. And another thing that I just wanted to highlight right here is that when you overtrain, testosterone comes down, cortisol goes up. And they've even shown in studies with elite bodybuilders here that when you're in energy restriction, significant decreases in total testosterone. So how do you push your testosterone up when you're trying to drop the body fat? It's pretty simple. In future videos, I'll show you exactly how I do this, right? So you can have optimal testosterone and also rip off the body fat. And one really important hormone that we need, again, in the up position is thyroid. And very shortly, I'll go into how to optimize DHEA and testosterone. But we just have to understand that thyroid is so important. If you've got food sensitivities, it's taken out. It causes autoimmune problems. And right here, stress, trauma, a low-calorie diet brings it down. And I'll show you why that's bad in a moment. Inflammation takes it out, toxins, kidney, liver dysfunction, and medications. Again, stress, trauma, fluoride, pesticides, toxins, heavy metals, and food sensitivities like autoimmune diseases. And again, the chemicals, thyroid disrupting, they're estrogenic and anti-androgenic. So I learned from a very smart gentleman here on YouTube called Kevin Tokoff. He's got a master's in science. And this is what thyroid does when it's in the up position. It increases amino acid uptake to boost muscle growth, protein synthesis. It increases the transporters for glucose and amino acids. So you got better glucose disposal. And this is key. It increases the enzymes for energy production, but also the steroid enzyme to boost testosterone through the roof. It also increases fat breakdown, so you get leaner faster and more energy. And that's just to name a few. I mean, it's a pretty important hormone. And when that old cortisol is up and any of those dysfunctions is true in your physiology, thyroid, growth hormone, androgens, DHEA all come down. And over time, this is what we're told by the system. You know, our energy comes down, our memory goes to shit, our testosterone comes down. But is that true? As we saw from Professor Huben earlier, there are men in their 90s with as much testosterone and DHEA as they had in their 20s. And we can do just as good as this. We just have to know how to do it. So another big thing that I learned about thyroid, and basically anything that you want to do in life, we have to make sure that inflammation isn't chronic. Now this video is from my good friend and mentor, Dr. J. Check this out.
Thyroid, the TG gene is concerning. Only concerning if you have inflammation here, but a lot of people do have, a lot of people do have inflammation.
Yep.
And that's a 10-fold higher risk of autoimmune thyroid issues.
Tenfold, right? So what
Yeah.
we
Well, so if he's sleeping, like inflammation usually is like lack of sleep, too much
Yep.
stress, like real obvious stuff, high blood sugar, heavy metals,
Yeah.
Testosterone off or whatever. So the basics are key, but it sounds like he's dialing in all that. The other thing about this gene is even if you're temporarily have inflammation, like say you've got just one day of stress, it'll shut your thyroid off for a couple of days, maybe,
Really? Okay. So stress and inflammation can shut this one down for a couple of days.
Yeah, so you just want to make sure you definitely don't want chronic inflammation, because that's where you get Hashimoto's, where you get completely destruction of your thyroid.
Yeah.
If you're just chronically not sleeping or whatever the thing is. But as long as you keep that inflammation down, you'll get plenty of energy. Your thyroid hormones should be fine.
Excellent. All right.
And not only will it shut down your thyroid, it's going to lower testosterone, it's going to push up cortisol, and it's going to lead to frailty, disability, cardiovascular events that negatively influence muscle mass. So, we just have to get this inflammation and all that shit under control. Now, my whole MO in life basically is to have a brain that's activated like this, right? The metabolism is in the prefrontal cortex, and the amygdala's got a little bit of juice. And as we saw earlier, that when the amygdala's got too much juice, it actually grows stronger. And the metabolism shifts, right? So we can't think, we've got ums and ahs, we don't know where we're up to. To make matters worse, look at the heart function here. Doesn't look good, does it? And basically, you're living on the wrong side of the tracks. So you've got more anxiety, anger, cortical inhibition. You feel depressed more, you feel bored and tired, inattentive. And you're in negative stress, so your muscles being torn down, your brain's thinning out. I know that sounds fucking terrible, and it is, but you can fix this, but it's not a cakewalk. And to make matters worse, at the end of the day, GABA, which makes you calm and relaxed, along with serotonin and melatonin, is down. But when you cross to the other side of the tracks, you're going to have more passion, courage, and there's a lot of science behind this. So Sean Aker, Harvard-trained psychologist, says we're 31% smarter in that positive stress. So even when you're activated here, right, performing under pressure, your brain looks like this. And also your blood pressure is better. So Kelly McGonigal spoke about that. She said, even when your heart's pumping, you're activated, your physiology looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. So that's pretty profound. And as you can see there, that she put that slide up. So when you're stressed out, full of cortisol, your blood pressure goes to shit. And, right here, the signature of effort and winning, your blood pressure is beautiful. And this research paper really just shines the torch on that. Negative moods are associated with negative outcomes. For example, the negative mood hostility is a risk factor for many disorders. For the sake of brevity, hostility is discussed here mainly in relation to one of the biggest sources of mortality, coronary heart disease. And that's because your blood pressure goes to shit, but your brain goes to shit, your testosterone plummets. And if you watch the previous videos, you'll know that when cortisol is too high, the testosterone that you've got is aromatized and turned into estrogen. So the other videos are linked below. And, I just can't emphasize enough that, we've got to get all these hormones working for us. You've got to make sure that you're at energy maintenance and above if you want your hormones to flowing. And if you're kind of overweight, you have to really just stick with it until you drop the body fat off. Then you start getting back up to maintenance. And I'll talk more about that in future videos. And don't forget that thyroid is absolutely huge. Why? Because it does all that. Increases muscle growth. You utilize glucose, blood sugar much better. You got more energy, you got more enzymes, you got more testosterone. It's just a hormone that we want in the goddamn up position. So the question becomes, how do we put this together? Well, don't forget that we've got these chemicals that are taking us out, these non-stick pans, and I've got more information about that to finally get these chemicals out of your life once and for all. And, you know, the science is very clear, these chemicals, even in sunscreens. So there are some sunscreens that are good, and there's a lot that are toxic. They accumulate in the body. And as Dr. J put in his book, Estrogeneration, so when these chemicals are in your bloodstream, some of them through the UV light, or when you go outside in the sun, the UV here, they actually glue onto the estrogen receptor and keep it in the on position. That doesn't sound helpful to me. So basically, we've got a lot of stress in our blood, and we've got to get that stress out of the blood, because if we don't, it's going to atrophy the cortex, our gonads, we'll have heart disease, and it's just lowering our potential in life to just have a great life and a great journey in life. And I just can't emphasize that enough. So we've got to get trophic support for the brain back. We want our brain to increase in size and IQ as we age. And that's super important for me. And the only thing that's going to take us out, as I've mentioned, inflammatory dysfunction like that. So food allergies are huge, because they will cause autoimmune diseases and attack the thyroid and a whole bunch of things. So we can fix this, but as you can see, it's not a cakewalk. But basically, in a nutshell, you've got 5 big problems that screw us over. And when it screws us over, it's pushing up cortisol. It makes us feel like garbage, and it changes our mental state. And as I mentioned earlier, the brain represents people as the mental states they habitually experience. So why handicap yourself with these chemicals and an inflammatory diet and food sensitivities, all of that shit? And this is the only thing that can take us out. So the question becomes, how do we start putting this together? On the previous video, I spoke about this omega-6 to 3 ratio. As you can see here, you got low-grade inflammation, chronic 24/7, serotonin depletion, there goes your happy brain, increased cortisol production. So if you want to get that fixed, check out the previous video, and it's a long step in the right direction. And on the future videos, I'll reveal how the neuroscience says we can make the amygdala smaller and increase the hippocampus, which is our memory, and the temporal parietal junction. So perspective taking, empathy and compassion get better and stronger. Now, one thing that you might know about is scientists call this precise circadian entrainment. So what does that mean? Well, when we get sun at the right time of the day and the right amount, that's going to be very beneficial for us. But if we don't, the science is very clear, and that's the PubMed ID up here to all of this. And this is coming from the scientists. So if you want to pause that and go over this, but if you look here, emotional responses, right? Irritability, anxiety, loss of empathy, frustration, risk-taking, impulsivity, negative salience, which means more negative thoughts. So, you know, it's not wonderful. And cognitive impairments. So, and then you've got chronic impact on health right there. So diabetes, cancer, metabolic, depression, you know, it's just a fucking mess. So what we have to think about, and this, Professor Huberman speaks about this all the time, in the first 2 to 3 hours of the day, you've got an opportunity to get some sun here. And you can also hack the sun by using something else I'll reveal in a moment. Professor Huberman said ideally within the first 30 minutes of waking up, you want to get sun to the retina. So you don't directly look at the sun, and I'll show you the times and the protocols in a moment. But when you do, it optimizes cortisol. So cortisol will come up to this really healthy level there. And then when cortisol starts to drop off, and he's done a lot of his housekeeping for the day, DHEA takes over. And remember, both DHEA and cortisol have the same protein hormone precursor, ACTH, and it's released in a pulsatile manner 40 times a day. So cortisol is going to be pumped out there, and that's fine. And then you got so much opportunity to start making DHEA after that point in this zone here, right? So sun is absolutely key. Now, this line that I've clicked on there, the cortisol line, that is healthy. So it comes up, then it comes down. And scientists say that late in the afternoon, it comes up again. So a lot of people late in the afternoon can feel a lot of low-level anxiety. And that's simply because cortisol's trying to come back up. And that's okay. Now, what scientists say is a huge problem if you don't get the light therapy, all bets are off. Cortisol is late shifted. So basically cortisol just keeps spewing out the whole day, and you've got poor energy, poor focus. And the science is very clear on this. You've got 3 hours to get 100,000 lux to the eye to switch on all of your performance hormones and optimize cortisol. And if you miss that, it goes into what they call the circadian dead zone. So cortisol will be late shifted. You'll have suboptimal testosterone. You'll have hardly any DHEA. You'll have hardly any thyroid. So to just show you the research on that, when you get optimal sunlight or light therapy to the eye, this is what happens. So the light hits the retina, it goes into the brain and triggers thyroid hormone release. Now, thyroid won't work if you've got chronic inflammation. As you saw earlier there, you've got to take care of chronic inflammation. And if you're on a low-calorie diet, you've got chemicals and shit, and you're not eating nutrient-dense foods, which I spoke about in previous videos, your thyroid won't work. So you can go out into the sun as much as you want, but the thyroid hormone will be just coughing and spluttering. It just won't have any juice to do what it is designed to do. And what's that? To build muscle, to rip off body fat, to give you more energy. And it makes perfect evolutionary sense. When thyroid hormone comes down, so does your metabolism, so does testosterone. And our ancestors in the winter, let's just say that they got light to the retina at 8 a.m. and it kind of went down at about 4 p.m. So there's not a lot of thyroid hormone there to do a lot of work, to build muscle. There's not a lot of thyroid hormone there to rip off the body fat, all of those things to make testosterone. But if you get sun to the retina early in the day or light therapy, which is the hack that I use, you're pushing thyroid hormone up to optimal levels. So not only does thyroid hormone switch on, so does testosterone, so does DHEA. And I can't emphasize this enough. Cortisol follows this healthy pattern here, and DHEA takes over. However, and as I've mentioned, if you are eating an inflammatory diet, your thyroid hormone's not working properly, you're eating a low-calorie diet, it's not going to work, is it? Because as we can see here, stress, inflammation, low-calorie diet, toxins, kidney, medications, fluoride, heavy metals, and autoimmune diseases and food sensitivities drive that. And I've made a video on food sensitivities and it's linked below. Then thyroid's not going to work. You're not going to have a lot of energy, and it boosts testosterone. So how does it boost testosterone? On screen there, the active thyroid hormone T3 increases Leydig cell receptors, so transporters, and the levels of steroidogenic enzymes in the pathway to make testosterone. But it's not just testosterone. It's for muscle protein synthesis. It's for glucose transporters, energy production, and fat breakdown, okay? So right here, when your body wants to make testosterone for a dude, your brain releases LH, luteinizing hormone, into the blood. It makes its way down to the testicles, and if you've got optimal thyroid hormone, it puts more doors. right? You got more doors for luteinizing hormone to rush into the testicles and say, make testosterone. Thing number one. Thing number two, more steroid enzymes in the pathway. So these are the pathways, all these pathways here. So these are the enzymes. So they're everywhere. So think about that. If you're getting the light to the retina early in the day, cortisol is healthy, thyroid hormones up, you're going to boost testosterone, muscle protein synthesis, and you're going to be charged and energized to attack the day. And this is how winning is done, as Rocky Balboa would say. But if you got those chemicals and you're eating foods that aren't appropriate genetically for you, you've got food sensitivities, you're not getting the sun, you're not doing all those things, what's going to happen? You're going to fall into a big bag of shit and you're going to feel like garbage. You're going to struggle to put on the muscle. You're going to struggle with energy. You'll be all over the shop. And this is what's happening to a lot of people. And when that continues to happen, the unfortunate truth is, as I mentioned earlier, you know, the old penis and the prostate and the testes, they scale down. And this is what we're told by the system. That as we age, our energy comes down, our brain goes to shit, so does our memory. But is that what's happening? If we give our body what it needs, things happen. We feel better. We've got more energy. And make no mistake, physical energy precedes all other energies. Emotional energy. When you've got energy, you feel good. When you've got testosterone, DHEA, you feel better, you do better, you're a better human. So that is these 7 videos. If you like these videos, guys, drop a comment in below, join in the conversation, because I'm here to help. I know what it's like to be a weak man. I was a borderline alcoholic. I was trying to be strong. I was struggling with fat loss and putting on the muscle. My energy was up and down. I didn't know how to fix it. And if you're a young man, you don't have commitments like a partner and kids, you're going to do all right. You're going to piece this together and you're going to go at it. But I know for myself, I needed a coach. I needed a mentor to push me in the right direction. I needed support. So if you're a family man, you're older, and you're just like, oh, how do I put this together? You might need extra help. And the biggest problem that I learned from my friend, Dr. Ken Berry, is that if you've left it too late, or you start blaming yourself about how you're a loser, I just want to play a couple of videos from Dr. Ken. So this one, you know, don't blame yourself. We can fix this. You can see that there's been a lot of stress. There's been a lot of information we've been given. We thought we're doing the right things, but maybe we're not. We've got food sensitivities. We're eating shitty food that shrink our testicles. We've got emotional stress. We've got all that garbage going on in our life. And it adds the fuck up, unfortunately. So listen to this. Time.
Yeah. And let me say this, Mark, because I think it's important. The average guy, the average teenage boy, the average 20-something, 30-something-year-old man, they're going to beat themselves up. It's never going to occur to them that it's their diet and that it's the plastic that all their foods come in. They're not. And so, because even if you're not a Puritan, we still, in modern society, in Western society, we have all these puritanical beliefs. You're a glutton. You're a sloth. You're a loser. You suck. You're lazy. For years, I thought I was just lazy.
Yep.
Right? I thought I'm just a loser. Lazy. I need to grow up. I need to get my shit together. And that wasn't it at all. I had hyperinsulinemia. I was developing prediabetes. I was chronically inflamed. I felt like shit every day. I wasn't lazy. And now that I've corrected all those things at 53 years of age,
50.
I'm more productive now at 53. I have more energy, more get up and go, more motivation, more ability to just stick to stuff than I had at 23 or 33. When I was 23 and 33, I thought I was just a lazy loser. I did not realize that I was poisoning my own body and my own mind with the food that I was given to eat or that I chose to eat, and the plastic wrap and the plastic everything that all of my food came in. I had no idea that that was what was wrong with me. I was blaming myself instead of blaming the true culprit, which was my food and the packaging my food came in. It's such a devious trap that we're, as young men, that you're caught in, because you blame it 100% on yourself and your failings, and you lack this and you lack this and you should be better at this, because that's kind of how we were brought up. That's how we were raised, that if something doesn't go right, it's your fault. And sometimes that is true, but when it comes to these things, that's not true. You've been misled by the big food manufacturers, by the big pharma manufacturers. And not only have they misled you, but the more devious step is they misled your mom and dad.
So how many times have you blamed yourself in the past? You know, this crappy food, these chemicals cause inflammation. And as you saw, when cortisol goes up, the amygdala gets stronger, fear, anxiety, aggression, irritability. We turn into loser because of the shit we've been told that's healthy. And, you know, damn, it's a mess. But there's one last video that you have to listen to, and it's hard to hear. You're not going to like it.
Absolutely. It's often too late by the time you've become financially comfortable.
Yeah.
Very often you've done so much damage to every tiny artery in your body that you're now stuck with permanent erectile dysfunction, or permanent forgetfulness, or permanent insomnia, permanent shortness of breath, chest pain, right? Gut issues. You've done so much damage. Some of it can't be taken back. And that's why I'm so active on social media, constantly reaching out and trying to help people, because once it's too late, you might regain a little bit of that function, but it's never going to be like it once was, and it's never going to be like it could have been.
I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of listening to the system. I want to listen to these legends: Dr. Ken Berry, Dr. Anthony J., these scientists, Huberman, Professor Sapolsky, because they're interested in peak human performance. And if we can get to a place where we've got trophic support, our brain gets to a healthy 82-year-old, we've got optimal testosterone, we're still fucking punching it through the day, we're motivated, we're enthusiastic. What kind of life can we lead? That's the question that you need to answer. And again, like if you're a younger dude and you don't have a lot of commitment, it's going to be pretty easy to do, pretty cruisy. But if you're older like me, you might need support. And if you want that support, information in the caption there. And, you know, we've got to get this right. I just can't emphasize it enough. And it's tough. Life gets in the road. This happens, something else happens. You go, oh, fuck it. Right? And that's cortisol talking. Because as Sapolsky said on many of his books, and he's spoken about this online, that when cortisol is a bit too high, we lose compassion, we lose empathy, especially for ourselves, and we lash out, because stress hormones foster negative emotion. And as you saw on that study, the brain represents people as the mental states they habitually experience. What if you were activated like Tony V, Gary V, Tony Robbins, the legends that you look up to? What if you could operate from that state, that physiology? Well, genetics plays into it too. If you've watched any of the videos before this, if you've got great genetics, elite genetics, you can take care of a lot of this shit that's coming into our body. But if you're like me, it's not going to happen. So if you like these videos, gents, join the conversation below. What I'm going to do now is summarize everything that we've covered so far. So in a nutshell, what we want to achieve is getting you from negative stress, cortisol up, muscle loss, penis, testicle loss, hormone loss, energy loss, and you losing more often than not in life and blaming yourself, to crossing the fucking tracks, having an activated cortex, better heart function, 31% smarter. And at the end of the day, you've got GABA up, serotonin, melatonin, so you get that deep restorative sleep to repeat that whole successful day again. Big energy, big sleep. Big energy, big sleep. So basically, in a nutshell, you've got the chemicals, right? They shut off testosterone production, cause inflammation and stress. If you're eating a low protein diet, you're shit out of luck. And I've spoken about that on previous trainings. What you've got to eat enough protein to trigger mTOR here that stimulates muscle protein synthesis. And I've spoken about that on previous videos. And when you've got optimal testosterone, free testosterone comes into the muscle cell, hits a transcription factor that promotes a pathway into the nucleus of the DNA. This transcribes mRNA proteins. These mRNA proteins comes out and builds muscle, baby. That's what it's all about. So if you've got optimal free testosterone, it's not all bound up, you're going to build the muscle. You're hitting mTOR here. And guess what shuts off mTOR? Cortisol. Even if you're eating adequate calories, if cortisol is up because you've got food sensitivities, you're not going to be building muscle. So we've got to make sure we've got our hormones balanced, healthy cortisol, thyroid, DHEA, and growth hormone in the up position. And the only thing that's going to take that out, as I've mentioned, are what you see here, emotional stress. I mean, it pushes cortisol up, brings down testosterone, free testosterone aromatase into estrogen. We're feminizing ourselves. We've got to really think seriously about being able to perform under pressure. And in upcoming videos, that's what I'll show you how to do. Inflammatory dysfunction. And one of the biggest things that starts to drive that is inflammatory food coupled to food sensitivities. And the previous video, you've got to get your omega index above 8%. Now, circadian stress, if you're not sleeping properly, you're not getting the sunlight, and there's many more things that you can do to optimize the circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is absolutely paramount to healthy hormones, big energy, optimal testosterone, and you getting what you want from life. Then we've got glycemic dysfunction, too many carbs, inappropriate amounts of carbs. Carbs aren't the enemy. I've said that before. We've all got a tolerance to how much carbs we can consume in a day. And for me, it's pretty simple. I've tested this out. 90 to 120 grams per day. That's it. That's my threshold. If I go over that, and in subsequent days, my blood glucose gets higher and higher and higher and stays higher, then I start developing insulin resistance. And if you've got a low choline diet, as I spoke about in previous video, you'll get insulin resistance and a fatty liver. Yo-yo dieting is out, overtraining is out. It sounds sexy, but it's not. Like busted at the gym. But guess what happens? You crush it at the gym. Cortisol goes up, testosterone comes down, free testosterone aromatized into estrogen, you go into fat storing mode, you feel like shit. We've got to train smarter at the gym. And a sedentary lifestyle won't cut it. We have got, if you want to be activated, we've got to activate ourselves. And a sedentary lifestyle isn't a part of that equation. The toxins, the heavy metals, the chemicals have got to be out, and the inflammatory foods have got to go. You've got to start selecting for nutrient-dense foods. And don't forget, right, your food can start to enlarge your amygdala because it pushes up cortisol and pushes up inflammation. So, and your genetics plays into this too. If you've got elite genetics, you're going to do okay for a long time. But if you've got average or garbage, it's going to show up early in life, as it did for me. And remember, we can shrink that amygdala down to size. We can increase the hippocampus here significantly. We can increase the temporal parietal junction, empathy, compassion, all of those amazing things, and move away from destroying our earning potential, our energy. So it's not just the penis, prostate, and testes that scale down. The old cortex, it thins out too. So as you saw there, what we've got to do is get the food right, the food sensitivities, get the chemicals out, which is absolutely paramount. And the next thing we've got to do is just understand that these scientists know what they're talking about when it comes to the circadian rhythm. So again, just to show you the circadian rhythm, right? When we don't get adequate levels of sun in the morning and late in the afternoon, and sometimes during the middle of the day, that's what happens. So pause that and check that out. And that comes from this research paper here. That's the PubMed ID. So the consequences of not getting adequate sun in the morning and a little bit in the midday when you're about 10 and 2, and the sunlight towards the end of the day. The sunlight towards the end of the day helps you get into deep restorative sleep. It triggers melatonin to go up, the sleep hormone. So you've got emotional problems if you don't get enough sun. You've got cognitive problems, and you've got chronic health problems. So it is super important, like diabetes, depression, cancer, metabolic abnormalities, cardiovascular disease. You're hypersensitive to stress. You get triggered all the time. So if you like these videos, just if you like these videos, drop a comment below, give it a like and a thumbs up. And as you know, what I'm all about is helping you get to a place where I am. I'm activated, I'm lean and muscular, I've got plenty of energy, plenty of fight, and I'm going to just charge at life, because that's what life's about. And also being able to perform under pressure like a fucking boss. Because if you can do that, you're going to push up testosterone, and you're going to push up DHEA, and you're going to thrive in life. And that's, again, how winning is done, as the great Rocky Balboa would say.